Go out to the whole world, proclaim the good news to all creation. You must judge whether in God's eyes it is right to listen to you and not to God. We cannot promise what we have seen and heard. Otito dịrị Jesu. The apostles got this order, this command, to proclaim the good news of the risen Lord to all creation. And shortly after that, powerful religious and political leaders tried to stop them. Whether it is right to listen to you rather than to God, we leave it to you to judge. But he gave us instruction, and we know he is God. We can't stop, no matter the consequences. My dear brothers and sisters, I welcome all of you to this joyous celebration. When Senator Okey Ezea approached me for this celebration, the timing was closer to the time he began his service of Enugu North Senatorial District in the National Assembly. It was to have been during Advent. But in our eyes, unforeseen circumstances constrained him to change the date. But according to God's plan, it is providential that this celebration is taking place in the week of Easter, where this clear that every Christian receives from Christ. So, what we thought was either a disappointment or a result of circumstances, incidences, and coincidences was really a result of God's own providential plan. Now, I welcome all of you to this. I welcome in a special way our brothers of the Diocese of Nsukka Anglican Communion. My brother, Bishop Aloy Agbo, if he is not here physically, I'm sure he is here with us spiritually. And I welcome all of you. I thank you for your presence and for this solidarity in prayer. I also welcome and thank all those who are public officers or public office holders, as well as the politicians among them, serving and retired military officers, and Ichi, all the friends of Ideke. He will have the opportunity of also welcoming all of you, but in the name of the diocese, I will want to say welcome. The readings of today draw our attention to the consequence of our faith in the resurrection. That we believe that Jesus died and rose has a consequence on our lives. The gospel tells us that having risen from the dead in the morning of the first day of the week, which from now onwards changes the beginning of the regulation and counting of time, Jesus appeared first to Mary of Magdala. Permit me to point the confusion that people often have about the women or some women in the Bible. Some think that Mary of Magdala was a prostitute. The gospel tells us Jesus cast 7 demons from her. And from that time, she decided to follow Jesus closely and to provide for Jesus and the apostles. Some others confuse Mary of Magdala with Mary of Bethany, the sister of Lazarus, who anointed the feet of Jesus shortly before his passion. Mary of Bethany. Bethany is very close to Jerusalem. And we always hear of Mary of Bethany in connection with her sister Martha and their brother Lazarus. And finally, the woman who was a sinner, who anointed the feet of Jesus in the house of a Pharisee, has no name. So don't supply that name and call her Mary of Magdalene. And besides, the gospel tells us the people said she was a sinner, not a prostitute. Prostitution is not the only sin that a woman can commit. In fact, the worst sin that women and other men and human beings commit is envy that leads to gossip. Gossip is worse than prostitution because it is destructive. So she was a sinner, but we don't know what sin she committed. Don't provide that sin. So, my dear friends, it was to this woman who was faithful in following Jesus until death, and even remarked where he was buried when all the apostles had run away. She was the one to whom Jesus appeared first and sent her to the apostles. A woman who had no value in Jewish culture was the person who was made the apostle of the apostles, as Holy Father Pope Francis calls her. Mary of Magdala is the apostle of apostles. And this was to change forever the dignity of women within the Christian community. The witness of women had no value in Jewish culture, but the news of the resurrection was first announced. Jesus later appeared to Simon, to 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus, and finally to the other 11. He reproached them, not because they denied him, but because they did not believe those who had experienced him and told them that he was alive. So also, many of us today do not believe the testimonies of those who have experienced Jesus in their personal life and in their public life. And they insist on proclaiming that he is alive. And they proclaim that, they do that proclamation with their life. These apostles were afraid until after Pentecost, or on the day of Pentecost. The first reading from the speech of Peter on the day of Pentecost. Or rather, after they had cured the paralyzed man who was brought to the temple. From the day of Pentecost onwards, the apostles kept announcing to people, Jesus is alive. You killed him. He was buried. He is risen. Without your knowing it, you were fulfilling the scriptures. And they tried to silence them because so many were accepting, repenting, and getting baptized. But the stubborn, religious, political leaders who always wanted, until today want, to maintain the status quo, tried to silence them. That we are here today talking about the risen Lord is a proof that they did not succeed. How did they make it? The first reading tells us clearly, these were common, uneducated fishermen. Any preparation for this assignment. But this is important. They recognized them to have been companions of Jesus. That is where it all begins. Companionship with Jesus. Not everybody who enters the church is a companion of Jesus. A companion of Jesus is somebody who stays with him, listens to him, and obeys his directives. When he selected the apostles before sending them out, they had to spend time with him. If many Christians today are no longer able to transmit the message, the love, the mercy, the justice of Jesus, it is because they don't spend time with him. They don't approach him in quietude, in silence, in humility, in openness. Very often, whenever we come to the Lord, we come just to talk, make noise, present our own problems, without necessarily just sitting at his feet quietly and obediently. And of course, the priests here behind me and those on my left-hand side know that many people answer Christian theologians today. A theologian is a person who explains our faith in God to the people. A person who talks about God and his things. But how can you talk about God if you don't talk to God? How can you talk about God if you don't know him? And we all know theology is studied on our knees, not in the libraries. That is why some lay women, laymen, humble, simple Christians like Peter, like John, are better theologians than some bishops and priests. Because it is about being with the Lord, knowing Him, and then communicating your experience of Him. Not just what others have told you. All of us here, or most of us here, are Christians of various denominations. And we have been given the mandate to go and proclaim the good news to all creation. In every circumstance in which we find ourselves. To be able to carry out that mandate, we have to learn first to be a companion of Jesus. Our attendance to the Eucharistic celebration, our communion with the Lord Jesus in the Eucharist, our devout reception of all the other sacraments, these are ways companions in Jesus, so that when we leave, we can transmit through our lives our experience of the Lord. And in that spirit, no human being, no suffering, no persecution can stop you. My dear brother, okay? I've known you for quite some time. And I'm not surprised you have decided to come here to thank God for the opportunity He has given you to serve and represent His people. Sometimes I'm at a loss why Nigerians celebrate election victories and political appointments. Are they celebrating an opportunity to show the people how things should be done? Or are they just celebrating another opportunity to steal and amass wealth? One renowned American talk show guest, whose name I don't remember now, said in a clip that is making rounds in the social media, which you may have heard. He asked a girl, what job do you think gives the greatest amount of money? And she answered, politics. And this man told her, well, nowhere in the world do politicians make a lot of money. But everywhere in the world, politicians steal a lot of money. The number of people, many of the people, now managing the affairs of our nation at various levels, from Abuja down to our local government, have not done any job. They have never been captains of industries. They have never been traders. They have never been civil servants. They have never been teachers. Nothing except politics. One of my cousins, a politician, Bianiadi Ojo, menwa bezigbo madu. Bem se agam big na ajun, boss no bu politician, me politics abogor, no nwegor. Entrepreneur. Before you opted to waste your money, because I know, pursuing this career that you have now at last, like the great 16th American president, Abraham Lincoln, after several disappointments you have eventually succeeded in getting. I would therefore want to understand your thanksgiving as your willingness to express to God thanks for having given you the opportunity to show that things can be done differently. Nobody doubts your interests in the welfare of Wansaka. I never asked you the origin of your company name or business name, Ideke. But whatever may be your reason, it is intimately associated with the name of this town. Nsaka Asado Ideke Aramon. So whatever may be your reason, I would want to interpret it as part of your love for the area you are now serving. You are now being sent to proclaim the good news to that institution through your life, your words, your actions. And in spite of the persecutions you may get, you have to remember, ask yourself, is it better to listen to human beings or to the Word of God? And with you, or through you, I'm addressing all the people in public office. Is it better to follow the tide of what our people do and think and want, or to do the right thing according to the mind of God? Make no mistakes about it. Everybody, or let me make a qualification, almost everybody around you would want you to be corrupt so that they can benefit from your corruption. In Nigeria, corruption is not evil so long as we are benefiting from it. To the standards of this world. But your life should be changed according to the experience, your experience of the risen Lord, and looking at you. A new culture will be created. Well, in Nigeria we call those in the Senate distinguished senators. Yes, some of them are distinguished in their excellent representation of their people. Some of you. But my dear brother, you know better than I do because I'm not there, that some are extinguished senators. And some others are. From the stories we hear about what goes on, and besides, in that you call it hallowed chambers of the Senate. Let me open a bracket, large parenthesis. Hallowed means holy. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Only God is holy, sacred. Every other thing is sacred according to the degree of its participation in the sacredness of God. This place is sacred. This house is sacred because here we encounter God. What makes the chambers of the Senate hallowed, sacred? A hall where some people, the only God they worship in that hall is mammon, money. A hall where some worshippers have sold their soul and their conscience to mammon. And we hear that some of you are fighting dirty about the allocation to your senatorial districts. And I am asking in the name of the people, Are those allocations to us or to your bank accounts? Are you fighting on our behalf or on your behalf? Because we have known people who have been in the Senate for 12 years and their people don't know anything about that. And every year they get hundreds of millions and billions allocated to their senatorial district. For what? Ejiga lugboro ogo alile to become a senator, only to get in there and be like the rest. You won't sleep. Your conscience as a Christian and as a Catholic will continue to remind you that you may not be doing the right thing. You were doing very well in your business. And you said there are values more important than money. Let me go and try and transmit some of these values. And now you're going to stay where you are. And ichetara ihwe nwatakịrị nne nna ya zuru ozi mana tupu o gbali na nne ya sịrị ya wuru onu ma erie ọ sị na erighị na ya adịghị ọtọrị nna asị aga narị na ọba anyị ndịrị ọ sị na erighị o na erighị anụ na onweghị ya ji anụ eme asị eze nwa kechidogburu anụ wee onega si ya wuje n'onyishi o ruo n'ụzọ ekere anụ chilaga jeka ma ọ tikerie bengwugwu anụ si ya fọ atikele shemoshe fọ atikele shemoshe nego nogan shemoshe iseye erigu shemoshe nnaga nogan shemoshe iseye erigu shemoshe fọ atikele shemoshe ihe a nọrọ na sineti abụghị nwe na-asị gị wolite n'anyị itikerie eji anụ mba anyị na-asị gị fọ atikele shemoshe. And this is also true of all our so-called representatives and those who hold power on our behalf. This is supposed to be a democratic system where the will of the people should determine who holds certain positions. The will of the people that are already limited by political party interests. Political parties are evil social clubs. Quote me anywhere. They are not interested in you and me. They are interested only in their own welfare. And they have hijacked our interests. And to make matters worse, Nigeria has no political parties. Nigeria has platforms for getting into power, stealing public funds, and remaining in power and avoiding prosecution. They change from one party to the other when they are accused of corruption and the indictment or what the charge is dropped, happening before all of us. What are their manifestos? What are the principles? What space do the people still have in their primaries that are anything but transparent? Bido na agbako ụtụtụ ruo n'uchichi atịgburu vote akpọ result ịga mega mbatịrị vote. Only in Nigeria will the number of people who cast their votes become larger than the population of the polling unit. And nothing happens. Okushikas go to court. Senegal just inaugurated their newly elected president last week, or maybe even this week. Sorry to say this, our president went. The photograph, the image of our president standing with the 44-year-old president of Senegal looked like an embrace between a grandfather and his grandchild. But that is another matter. But when the Senegalese elections were concluded, I called a friend in Senegal to congratulate her, one of my former students in Rome. And she told me, all of us accept this as God's will. In that country, nobody asks you whether it's Christian or Muslim. The first president of Senegal was Leopold Sédar Senghor, who was a philosopher, a Christian, in a largely Muslim country. We accept this as God's will. And he is God sent from the way he emerged. And I asked her, are the results not being contested? And she said, no, that does not happen in our country. No, that does not happen in our country. In our own country, when the people have spoken, the courts will change sometimes or are alleged to change the results. Consider alleged. When the lawyers know I'm okay, but lawyer, I put it to you. But even if they were to come, it is better for me to listen to God than to the words of men. That is a country. Development is not about roads. Development is not about industries. Development is about human formation in values and virtues, which is what the church has always engaged in. And sometimes some of those roads that are built are meant to cover our views and our eyes and divert our attentions from the real problems that we have. That is why Eremanandon Saka double expressway, because you never taught them the responsibility of managing wastes properly. The moment you do a good road to Ichi, the youths will become angry, worry bombs, maybe many gear, because nobody teaches us respectful use of roads. That is where development begins. Until our country gets our education system right, all other problems, security, corruption, disunity, will only continue to worsen. You have an opportunity. You may be minority. The apostles were an irrelevant minority. It does not matter. There is no minority with regard to the truth. The lessons learned from the last general elections in Nigeria are clear. No matter what the politicians and the power brokers may decide to do. By the way, some politicians are still suffering from hang-up from that election. Nigerians have moved on. In our life every day. And now it is the time for governance. But those elections have taught all of us there is a limit to the extent people in power can go in holding people down, holding the rest of us down. Obey one day on Nabagara. One day. And so any of you who recognizes that he is there to serve as to give thanks to God for having given him or her that opportunity. And anybody who thinks that that is just an opportunity to enrich himself will have have to live all his life with our voices in his conscience telling him, for atkele shemoshe. And as a Christian, all of us have a mandate to bring the values of the gospel to the family, to the workplace, to public offices, to political institutions, and our national establishments and institutions. This is your chance to bring Christian values into the Senate chambers so that maybe it could indeed become hallowed chambers. May God be with you.